You think you know what it means to be human. You feel safe, comfortable, civilized. But your ancestors weren't like you. They were strange, brutal, and they lived in a world that seemed designed to erase them. Their lives were an unrelenting nightmare, and their legacy is buried deep inside your DNA. Get ready to meet the family. The story of human evolution is usually told as a triumphant march of progress, a simple, straight line from ape to us. But the real story is so much stranger and infinitely more unsettling. The human family tree isn't a line. It's a twisted, gnarled thing, with bizarre branches and dead ends we're only now beginning to uncover. For hundreds of thousands of years, our direct ancestors shared this planet with other kinds of humans. Hominins so familiar, yet so disturbingly different, they force us to question what human even means. We're about to journey back in time into the darkest corners of our own history to unearth the eerie legacy of our creepiest ancestors. Be warned, you might not like what you find. Let's start over 2 million years ago, on the unforgiving savannas of Africa, with one of our earliest confirmed relatives, Homo habilis, the handyman. But that name, suggesting clever invention, hides a terrifying reality. The life of Homo habilis wasn't one of dominance, it was one of desperate, haunted survival. Averaging between 3.5 and 4.5 feet tall, with long, ape-like arms, they were a species caught in a horrifying evolutionary limbo. They were just starting to unlock the secrets of stone tools, but these crude choppers weren't the weapons of a master hunter. They were the tools of a scavenger. Imagine their world, a landscape teeming with monsters. Saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, and massive crocodiles lurked in the shadows. For the most part, Homo habilis wasn't the hunter, it was the hunted. Fossil evidence tells a grim story. A foot from one individual shows crocodile bite marks, a sudden violent end at the water's edge. Another leg bone bears the chew marks of a leopard. Their entire existence was a constant, nerve-shredding game of avoidance. They likely slept in trees to escape predators that stalked the ground at night. Every single meal was a life or death risk. They weren't taking down mammoths, they were either waiting for a bigger predator to finish its meal before darting in to steal scraps, or they were bravely trying to scare killers off a carcass. Think about that. Their best-case scenario for dinner was to run towards a lion's kill, frantically slice off what they could, and flee before the original owner came back. The world of Homo habilis was a world of constant fear. Their brains were getting bigger, a crucial step on our journey, but this likely came with a terrifying new awareness of their own fragility. They lived in a world filled with things that saw them as nothing more than prey. It's a miracle any of them survived long enough to pass on their genes, a miracle that lives in the deepest, most primal parts of our own minds. If Homo habilis tells a horror story of external monsters, our next relative introduces a far more intimate and unsettling kind of dread. Let's jump forward to Ice Age Europe and Asia to meet the most famous of our extinct relatives, the Neanderthals. Here, the horror comes from looking at a reflection that is almost, but not quite, human. Neanderthals weren't the brutish, hunched-over cavemen from old cartoons. They were powerfully built, with dense muscles perfectly adapted to a harsh, cold world. They had huge noses to warm the frigid air, and their brains were, on average, even larger than ours. They were smart. They made sophisticated tools, controlled fire, and may have even created art. They were successful hunters of mammoths and woolly rhinos, but their lives were unbelievably violent. Examining a Neanderthal skeleton is like reading a medical chart from a war zone. The fractures are everywhere. One famous individual from Shanidar Cave in Iraq survived a crushed leg, a skull injury that likely blinded him in one eye, and had an arm that was shattered and severed. The only modern comparison for this pattern of trauma is found in professional rodeo riders, people who regularly tangle with large, angry animals. This wasn't a series of unlucky accidents. This was just life. The most chilling part, though, wasn't the violence they endured, but the violence they inflicted on each other. Evidence for Neanderthal cannibalism is widespread at sites in Spain, France, and Belgium. And this wasn't just about survival. At sites like Goyet Cave, the remains of Neanderthals, including children, were butchered in the exact same way as the reindeer and horses found with them. Bones were stripped of flesh. Skulls were cracked open for the brain. Limb bones were smashed for the marrow. To whoever did this, their own kind weren't family. They were meat. And here's the final, unsettling twist. We thought they were gone. A failed branch of the family tree. But they're not. Genetic research has proven that modern humans interbred with them. If your ancestry is from outside of Africa, you carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. Their genes influence our hair, our skin, and our immune systems. Their legacy isn't just in the dirt, it's inside you. We carry the genetic ghost of an ancestor who lived a life of incredible brutality and, sometimes, turned on its own. What Neanderthal trait would you find most unsettling to discover in your own genetic code? Let me know in the comments below. The Neanderthals left us bones and genes, a tangible, if brutal, legacy. But what about an ancestor so mysterious, they're little more than a whisper in our DNA? What if a major branch of the human family existed for millennia, and we barely know they were here at all? Prepare to meet the ghosts of our past, the Denisovans. Our knowledge of Neanderthals is built on hundreds of fossils. Our entire knowledge of the Denisovans began with a single, tiny piece of a child's finger bone found in a Siberian cave in 2010. Later, a few teeth and a jawbone turned up. That's it. For a species that may have been as widespread as Neanderthals, their physical record is almost non-existent. That's what makes them so eerie. They are a ghost lineage. And yet, from that tiny bone, scientists extracted a full genome. The results were stunning. This was a new type of human distinct from both us and Neanderthals. Even more shocking was the discovery that, like Neanderthals, they also interbred with our ancestors. Traces of Denisovan DNA are found in modern populations across Asia, and are especially high in people from Papua New Guinea and Australia, who can have up to 5% Denisovan DNA. This genetic echo is the only reason we know how widespread they were. We now know there wasn't just one Denisovan population, but likely several distinct groups spread across Asia, from the freezing mountains of Siberia and Tibet to the tropical forests of Southeast Asia. They were incredibly adaptable. Genes inherited from Denisovans helped modern Tibetans adapt to high-altitude, low-oxygen environments. Other genes passed on seem to have helped our immune systems. The creepiness of the Denisovans is the creepiness of the unknown. What did they even look like? One tantalizing clue may come from a massive skull from China, nicknamed Dragon Man. Some scientists believe it might be a Denisovan, and if so, it paints a picture of a formidable human with a large, robust face, almost square eye sockets, and huge teeth. But the jury is still out. The Denisovans were a major part of the human story, and yet they vanished, leaving behind only a few scattered bones and a genetic ghost in our blood. Who were they? How did they live? How did they disappear? They're a haunting reminder that our history is full of gaping holes, and that entire worlds of human experience can be lost forever. Conclusion. The world of our ancestors was a deeply strange and terrifying place. It was a world populated by haunted survivors like Homo habilis, living in the shadow of giant predators, home to uncanny twins like the Neanderthals, whose violent lives sometimes turned inward, and haunted by ghost lineages like the Denisovans, who dominated a continent and then simply faded away. This isn't a simple story of progress. It's a brutal epic of survival, strange adaptations, interbreeding, and extinction. These eerie relatives aren't just footnotes in a textbook. They are a fundamental part of our story. Their struggles forge the resilience that defines our species. Their genes, flowing through our veins, affect our bodies in ways we are only just beginning to understand. The legacy of our creepy ancestors is the legacy of humanity itself, complex, mysterious, and at times deeply unsettling. The next time you look in the mirror, remember, you are not alone in there. You're carrying the ghosts of a very, very old family. If you want to continue exploring the dark and hidden corners of our human story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more journeys into the deep past.